I always feel so passionate about the change is coming. Such a fast acceleration, innovation is exploding here. I think the rate of innovation has never been so fast as we're now beginning to see it. And this is going to accelerate more and more. I mean, I just see, for example, the classic thing is in the last 6 months, most people are throwing away their radios and replacing it with Alexa and Google Home, basically using voice. I feel that there are these really paradigm changes that's happening, particularly seamless payments is coming through here with transparency, reduction in costs. And I talk a lot around the world and advise a number of other banks about voice. I think voice is the new click right now, because it all comes down to who can provide convenience. I feel very, very passionately about this one. Banking should the winners are going to be the ones who provide convenience at a real reduction in cost. No more with these hidden charges that are going over here. So that means that I think for a long, long time, a lot of banks have been sitting on their, maybe one can say the larger bottoms, taking their customers maybe a little bit for granted. But now the challenger banks and a lot of traditional banks are beginning to wake up and smell the coffee. And I'm now beginning to see a massive paradigm changes happening. And those who will change will become the next successful. Those who don't change fast enough will become the dinosaurs. I do feel that in the next few years, it's not going to be one bank versus another bank. The biggest challenges is going to be technology providers. I see the biggest challenges coming from Google, which I feel very passionately about, Apple, Facebook, Amazon with its amazing reach, with its many companies. There will be the next versions of banks of the future, and they're going to be threatening the traditional banks. For example, I always sort of talk about, just think of today, there's now 1.5 billion users using Gmail. And with Gmail, you can attach pictures, you can attach a picture of your dog, or you can also attach money. And you can then transfer dollars from one account to another account using your Google Pay. In the future, if you can imagine, if you can now send money across borders, you have got a fully fledged bank with foreign exchange services at a massively reduced cost. And I think these are the biggest threats. Now, how can banks compete with these sort of companies? For example, today, if I go to the Android mobile, I'll be able to, under my contacts, I will see, I don't know, Ali Mohammed and Vanessa Jones. I click on there, and some of the startups, and there's now an option to send money to this person in your contacts, or ask for payment to be taking place here. So really the biggest threat, I think, is going to be the technology providers. So the banks will have to work with them, and also, or look at maybe providing a higher functionality. Because I think the days of just the traditional sending money have come and gone. That boat is gone. The question is, what added value, what extra comfort, feel, and convenience can banks provide to your customer at a reduced cost with increased convenience? That's what it's all about. Interesting enough, first of all, the technology, I think that's driving it is convenience, basically which is going to be voice. I think voice is going to be the number one. The next thing I think is going to be really, really big is augmented reality, in the sense that you could just use your smartphone and point here, oh, that's my branch, here's my account, or maybe take my credit cards, although I do believe the physical credit cards will die in the next 5-10 years. But I can take the credit cards and it will automatically, oh, this is your credit card, here's your bank balance, here is all the last transactions. So it's all about using technology to provide convenience. And I think the next level I get very excited about is what's called driverless banking. Driverless banking is basically incorporating artificial intelligence. I have an example when I talk in my lectures around the world about the idea that why don't you just treat your bank as your personal assistant? So for example, if you want to, for example, go to Berlin and see an exhibition, you ask your bank, say, I would like to go to this exhibition in Berlin. And he says, fine, okay, I know you're going to go there. I know you normally fly with, let's say, Lufthansa. I know you normally like to stay at the Hilton. And I know, for example, you need foreign exchange. Would you like me to arrange that for you? So that would be the added value I think that the banks can compete in. Of course, and also, so it's all about using technology to provide convenience. But I think the technology is a stepping stone. What we really need at the top of it is, what is it? Convenience. Getting out of people's lives. I'm not asking to fill out forms, letting them do what they need to do as simply as possible, using the technology to do that. But ultimately, it's a good feel factor. That's why I think you're going to see many young people and the millennials moving on to these platforms, which is technologically providing the convenience. That's what we want. It's the convenience, the good feeling. It's a sexy product, it's a sexy service. It's going to get out of my way. Who can do that? And the technology, of course, to facilitate that is things like voice, augmented reality, artificial intelligence. I think is the number one key player that's going to make the whole operations reduce the cost, provide transparency, and provide a much better service to our customer. I think for a long time, I think this region has maybe taken things a little bit for for granted, for complacent. But I mean, I looked at Revolut, I think 4 years ago, they came in through about 4 or 5 years ago, through Level 39, the accelerator program. Nikolai was one of the founders. He was talking about, now I've got to want to set up this challenging bank, set up a mobile bank. And in 4 years, they have gone from nothing to today now being worth $2.5 billion, something like that, with a customer base of 4 million customers, from nothing to this point. These challenger banks are really, really now putting the traditional banks in the UK, where I sort of basically focus on in Europe, under challenge. So now many of them are thinking, my God, we got to now move. Are we going to maybe adopt some of their function? And I see these challenger banks motivating and bringing up new ideas into traditional banks, or maybe some of the traditional banks setting up their own accelerator programs to say we too can become a fintech that is going over there. So I think these challenger banks, they're lean, they're mean. I always talk about they're like little fast motorboats. They can then react to the customers, whereas traditional banks, we sit back there in our big bottoms here, we think about our pensions, and where we're going to go on holidays. We're not as flexible. But then we've got all the overheads, you've got the security, you've got the public relations, you've got all the regulatory requirements, which just basically means you can't react so quickly. So the challenges, I think the challenger bank, and the other thing which is interesting, I'll talk a little bit more about why I think the challenger banks or the challenger fintechs are now themselves are under all sorts of pressure. Because for every one that's successful, 10 of them have gone to the toilet, or 10 of them have gone down the drain in a big ways. And I'll see that in Seamless, and we'll talk about that later on. One of the nice things about being in Seamless is actually getting to see which way the market is going. It's actually a very, very nice environment to see that. I have a dream. I see in the next 5-10 years, there will be no more cash. There will be no physical credit cards. It will be all logical stuff. I would see that probably one of the biggest players, the sending of money and transmitting will just be de facto standard. Well, maybe the platform providers will be providing that the Googles, the Apples of these worlds. And what will banks do? They will provide the higher level functionality. They will provide the stakes, like for example, maybe there's CIP, the VIP services, maybe provide better foreign exchange services, maybe there's a place you go to get loans. So they can then concentrate, and really the mass market, the retail market, is now becoming very unprofitable for many of the banks. And I think that you will see that in that future, sending money will just be the de facto standard. In fact, even taking 10, 20 years time after that, I see that everybody will be given, as part of the national ID, a government bank. That will be your central bank. You can put all your taxes, all your incomes, everything. Of course, it will be good for governments as well. So that'll be your de facto account. And then everything from there, then you talk about financial institution who can add value to it as well. And that would be almost like a free, that would be available for any person eventually in the future. So that's the vision that I see in the future.